Good evening, campers, it's me, Kieran. Today we are going to talk about a 1974 sci-fi fiction book, that is Joe Haldeman's The Forever War. I didn't plan for it, but me wearing khaki and reviewing a military sci-fi book is somewhat a coincidence that I quite enjoy. Not that the title The Forever War would have given it away. The armed forces are now not confined by individual countries. Instead, all countries on Earth have joined forces to create the United Nations Exploration Force. And there is a distant planet overrun by aliens called the Taurans, on a planet which Ozzy Osbourne would call Sharon. My celebrity impersonation and ability to correctly say the names of exoplanets are equally lacking, okay? But Sharon is beyond Pluto, and we need a way to fight. We can't just get in our cars and drive to Pluto. That would be forever. Instead, with revolutionary technology in collapsers, we could travel vast distances, myriad light years condensed down into a single second. And on board with these collapsers is our protagonist, William Mandella. There's nothing really to say, he's literally just an ordinary guy. Meaning that he's the exact same as the other privates who, upon undertaking military training, end up shooting at each other. They can't really survive any of the extreme environments, even though they have these pressurized power suits. Some people will begin joining the dots by hearing military science fiction, a war, and power suits, and that will be Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein, pretty much like the spearhead of this entire subgenre. I thought this was a little nod from Haldeman to Heinlein, but you go on the internet and look at this, it's like a huge conversation. But I do feel if you're going to read The Forever War, or at least Starship Troopers, you should read the two in tandem. They do have interesting conversations and rebuttals against each other. But The Forever War, what is The Forever War about? What are the Earthling and the Taurans fighting over? Now, quite honestly, no one really knows. Propaganda rules. You just feed the privates the information that they need to have, to the point that they don't question it. Haldeman does exacerbate this further by saying that the privates have this fed into them hypnotically, to the point where they don't have to think what they're doing, just that we are the good guys, they are the bad guys. With a myriad of scientific breakthroughs such as intergalactic travel, collapses, power suits, and hypnosis, when is this book set? The 1990s! I'm aware that Joe Haldeman couldn't see 20 years in the future, but this is so far-fetched, and looking back, it's quite funny to think that all this technology could have been plausible in the age of the Spice Girls. But I just imagine all these soldiers fighting this alien enemy on this alien planet. They don't really understand the rules of the theatre of war, and one of them just has hit me baby one more time. I don't know the reason or the rationale to why Haldeman decided to set this from the off in the 1990s, but it makes me chuckle, okay? But before we digress, The Forever War is definitely an analogy in relation to the Vietnam War. This alien landscape, not really knowing the rules, is akin to how the American soldiers would have viewed going into Vietnam. Americans being conscripted into a war that they don't really know why they're going to fight. The juxtaposition between climate and terrain, let alone the Viet Cong not even going for a traditional style of warfare. American soldiers would have gone into this thinking about World War II, that there would be trenches, but the Viet Cong went the guerrilla route. Haldeman himself was a veteran of the Vietnam War, and he does capture within the heavily militaristic parts at the beginning the unformulaic, the chaotic, the things happen approach that war does. But this action-packed, unrhythmic description of the military did make me wade in concentration and even enjoyment, thinking, I don't really know what I'm expecting from this. But in every war there is a turning point, and the turning point for The Forever War is when Mandella comes home. Mandella has survived his first tour of war, and what was only a few years to him has been decades on Earth, and this is because of time dilation, because he has travelled that far a distance in such a short space amount of time. Meaning, this is the best part, Mandella, when he returns, comes back to Earth in the year 2023! The year that I read this book is the year that Mandella first comes back to Earth and is completely alienated by the society that he has been fighting for to maintain freedom. While Haldeman was completely off in regards to the technological advances of the 1990s, I still can't get over it. He is quite close to how society functions in 2023. 3. Gender roles are being subverted. There's a hint towards preferred pronouns and definitely mention of neo-pronouns. Homosexuality is accepted, and so much so in this book that it's encouraged by the government, wanting people to engage in homo life, as it's coined within this book, to stop overpopulation. There is vast urbanization and gentrification of areas. Autonomy over your life and body is a given, and technology akin to Siri and Alexa and an Uber app. And while these aspects definitely go a lot further than what they are, to think that Haldeman was trying to predict 50 years into the future our present, I think he's got a lot of stuff right. Haldeman is showcasing here that if you have liberty and if you have freedom, the society will ultimately progress for the better. The only problem present is that the veterans have future shock. Future shock is when the veterans who are now acclimatized to the war, once they come back to society, don't really fit in and they're not really accepted. The world that they left behind to secure its future and freedom doesn't want them anymore. Haldeman, through the use of time dilation, exacerbates this, and Mandella feels as though he has what was progressive and liberating ideas are now old world. As we reach 2024, Mandella decides to go back to war where he fits in. So not only does the forever cycle of war continue, but his forever cycle of being constantly alienated against the society that he wishes to protect. The only person that he can get a connection to is someone who has his values, who understands his life, and that's Mary Gay Potter, another veteran. But due to a circumstance, Mary Gay has to leave sooner than Mandella. That he's constantly pondering, is she alive? Does she exist even on his timeline? Is she his past or is she his future, when all he wants is to be present with her? As this war progresses, so does William Mandel's progression through the ranks, constantly getting a new view of the war. But millennia on, he has nothing in common with the current privates. There are drastic shifts in dynamics. The new troops have to learn 21st century English in order to communicate. He's the only white person in the army because of interracial marriages. Everyone on the society in the year 3000 looks Polynesian, as Haldeman says. Even though promiscuity between troops was encouraged back then in the 1990s, he's the only heterosexual person there. Everyone in the year 3000 is homosexual. Well, let's not go telling the right-wingers that, am I right? And this new society only refers to themselves as man. But let's not go telling the left-wingers that, am I right? Clash between the old and the new comes to loggerheads as basically they have to end up fighting the war and finishing it, resorted to medieval technology. A man's resolution in the end is creating a society of people who are basically Mandela with his old ways. They have progressed to the point where the next step in progression is to refer back to Mandela. The future of society relies on exactly what Mandela fought for and wanted to establish in the beginning. And I think it is such a moment as Haldeman writes that the colony that Mandela ends up on is called Middle Finger. Mandela is mocked, he is scathed, he is alienated, he is segregated by the society that ultimately ends up millennia down the line just wanting more of him. This book is great, and even though I had a hiccup with the militaristic heavy beginning, that's just a personal subject. I don't particularly enjoy that type of writing, but if you're into that, you'll love this from beginning to end. The use of time dilation to exacerbate all these notions and to continually be reflecting on these themes of progression and regression, and what does true progression look like in a free society. It's really captivating. This book has had me thinking a lot since putting it down, and I think it is justly deserved to be one of the pioneering works of science fiction. So much so that Science Fiction Masterworks, yes, you know, the boys with the really bad covers, it was the first one they ever produced. Definitely think it deserves to be cemented and accoladed as such as one of the best science fiction novels written. And for that, I'm giving Joe Haldeman's The Forever War a 9 out of 10.